I loved watching these movies again, but I hated writing this. It was extremely tedious, so I really hope you all enjoyed it. I won't be doing anything like this ever again.
So, I lied. The Pokemon franchise is never ending. If a medium of entertainment exists, there's probably something Pokemon related in there. Games, animated series, card games, that discolored plush from the early 2000s that you just don't have the heart to throw away. It's literally everywhere. And if you go deeper into each medium, there's even more, like game spin-offs or other games for the card game. And that's the case for the animated series as well. There's the main anime and everything surrounding it, of course, but what about outside that? What would you find if you decided to look at the various mini-series that have been put out over the years? Well, only some of the greatest works of art Pokemon has ever released. Not a big deal.
君、ポケモン好きですか?
Now, the title Pokemon miniseries can refer to a lot of different pieces of media. There's a few obvious ones like Pokemon Generations, Origins, Twilight Wings, and so on. But if you use the title loosely, you get some others like The Two Professors, a 3-episode series where Professor Oak and Willow from Pokemon Go discover Meltan.
I've never seen this Pokemon.
In my opinion, not super important to cover in a video, but maybe someone really liked this one, who knows. Another example, Cube-Shaped Pokemon on QB Island, a 5-episode series made to promote Pokemon Quest. You know, that game where they're all cubes. Like, it's kinda cute, but I just don't see much I can add to it or any meaningful conversation we can have because of it. So shorts like that will be skipped. And with that explanation out of the way, here's how we're gonna go through these. Going through the different miniseries, I noticed there's 2 clear camps that all of them can be put into. Ones that go for more serialized, complete stories, and ones that are anthologies. If you don't know what an anthology series is, it's like if every episode followed a new and different story or a completely different character disconnected from anything previous. They're much more episodic, like Generations or Evolutions, as opposed to the serialized miniseries that may occasionally follow different characters, but they all converge and follow the same story, like Origins or Twilight Wings. Make sense? Cool. But since the structure of these miniseries can vary drastically, using the same grading system for every single one wouldn't be super fair. So here's the plan. For the anthology miniseries, it'll be an extremely simple grading system, as these are, on average, much shorter and don't always have some super deep plot or anything. So each episode will get a simple rating out of 10. And for the serialized miniseries, I'll be grading them on 3 categories, each one being 5 points each. Story. Just like my Pokemon movies video, this one's pretty straightforward. Does the story resonate with me or feel impactful in any way? That's what I'll mainly be looking for. Feeling. This category is a little more broad. It'll be easier to get what I mean as I grade them, but like, I don't know, when I watch stuff, I just get this feeling. What does it make me feel, or how does it make me feel? And lastly, enjoyment. This category and feeling kinda coincide with each other, but trust me, they're very different, though the amount of enjoyment could affect the feeling and vice versa. I'm writing this out and also reading this out, realizing it doesn't make much sense if you aren't literally in my brain right now, which I'm glad you aren't, because that'd be really weird. Weirdo. But it doesn't matter. I'll explain my thoughts when I need to, so it'll be easier to understand. And at the end of the day, don't take any rating I give these too seriously. I'm just one opinion on the internet. If you like something I didn't, or if you don't like something that I did, all the power to you. Okay, I know that was a lot, but trust me, it was super necessary. Now, we can get into the main event. Going in release order, first up on the list is... Being a retelling of Pokemon Red, Blue, and Green, Origins follows Red as he goes on his adventure through the Kanto region. If you've played any of the Gen 1 games, you probably know how this one goes, but it's got a few fun changes here and there that make it a bit more fresh than just another Kanto story. Though it is pretty fitting as the first miniseries, being the first generation and all. We'll go through the episodes and then I'll give my thoughts and reviews at the end, so let's get straight into it. The beginning of Origins shows just how much attention to detail went into the series, with the classic menu screen from the original games popping up and selecting new game, where we get to see the intro with Professor Oak in a whole new light. As if he's on a real stage, lights shine down on him as he explains the Pokemon world. But we all know this stuff, so we're good. Oh, he's still going, even though I said that we don't. Okay. Like I said before, in this series we follow Red from the very beginning of his journey. After falling down the stairs like an idiot, he runs over to Oak's lab to get his starter Pokemon, but runs into a familiar face. Blue, or Green, depending on which language you watch Origins in, got called to Oak's lab as well. They fight a bit before Oak hands them their Pokedexes and asks for their assistance in completing them. And in return for this favor, he gives them one of 3 starter Pokemon: Bulbasaur, Charmander, or Squirtle. Red picks Charmander, and Blue picks Squirtle. Then they go off on their respective paths. Not too long after, Red sets his mind on the goal Oak gave him: so he tries to catch any Pokemon he can in the area. He even tries to catch a trainer's Nidoran, and I'll say it because no one else will. Not cool, man. If I was that trainer, I would have been very angry. But instead of actually doing something about it, I'd just stew in the anger and finally figure out what I would have said to him 2 days later. That'll show him. Red makes it to the entrance of Viridian City, where he runs into Blue again, who challenges him to a battle. And the result is, it's not ideal. Red stresses over the loss, but Brock, who watched the battle, comes up and gives him some needed advice. He says that if he wants to learn the basics of battling, Red should visit a gym leader and that he should think about what Pokemon battles mean to him. After, Red goes and heals up Charmander before moving on to Pewter City, where he hears about the gym leader, Brock. Making a visit to the gym, he gets turned down by the people out front, which is honestly valid. I don't think this kid can even tie his shoes yet, but Brock did invite him, so he let him in. They enter the field and start their battle. This bit is really cool because of the HP bars on the screen. I don't exactly know how they keep track of that, but it's a really cool detail. This whole battle is basically Red learning what type matchups are, and it doesn't go too well at the start, but as he switches in and out of Pokemon, he figures out what's most effective against Brock's rock types. Eventually, it comes down to just Charmander and Onix, both on low HP. They charge at each other, attacking at the same time, but Charmander barely pulls out the win due to a string shot lowering Onix's speed earlier. With this, Red gets his first badge and continues his journey to completing the Pokédex. I'll save a lot of my thoughts on the series after we've gone through all the episodes, but this is a really good start. It's nothing like groundbreaking if you've played through the Gen 1 games, but I don't think it's a negative per se. It feels like a real celebration of how far Pokemon has come since then. I particularly like the character designs a lot. I don't know. There's something about the faces specifically that feels very nostalgic to me. It's just pure good old Pokemon, baby, and I like it. On to episode 2. This episode mainly takes place inside of Lavender Town, but before we see that, we get a short recap of a bunch of things Red's done since the end of episode 1, like defeating Misty and Lieutenant Surge, evolving Charmander into Charmeleon, stopping some Team Rocket guys, and finally getting a bike before arriving in Lavender Town. Here, he learns of ghosts appearing in Pokemon Tower from two people chatting inside the Pokemon Center. Then, they vanish after saying there was a white hand on Red's shoulder. Hey, maybe they had somewhere to be. I get it. I disappear like that sometimes too. Red is told by Nurse Joy to go visit the Pokemon house before going to the tower. So he makes his way over there and meets Reina, who gives him a tour. This place is Mr. Fuji's house, which he renovated into a place for abandoned Pokemon. Among these Pokemon is a baby Cubone, who's afraid of everyone due to Team Rocket killing its mother. Well, everyone except Mr. Fuji. He came and took in the Cubone not too long after what happened. Anyways, once the trauma dumping was finished, and as Red is about to head over to Pokemon Tower, it's revealed that Mr. Fuji is stuck inside the tower because of Team Rocket taking over the place recently. He went to stop them, but never came back. So, Red proclaims that he's gonna go save him after he flexes his 3 badges for some reason. Like, we get it, but it's not that impressive. Later that night, Red sets out to investigate the tower, but Blue is just ahead of him. He listened in on the conversation earlier and wanted to take the glory of stopping Team Rocket for himself. What a guy. Always striking while the iron's hot and taking his opportunities into his own hands. Must have been the wind. Running away like a little baby, Blue runs directly into Red, who gives him a nice hug. Blue tries to convince Red to run, but he's here on a mission, so he sends out Charmeleon attempting to battle the ghost. While they're distracted, Blue decides he isn't a little baby anymore and sneaks past them both, crossing paths with a member of Team Rocket on the stairs. While all this is happening, Cubone is getting restless back at the Pokemon house and is able to escape, making its way to Pokemon Tower. After a while, Blue calls out to Red and throws him the Silph Scope that he got from Team Rocket. With it, he's able to see the ghost's true form. It's Cubone's mother, Marowak, repeating the same final words it had to its child before it died. Then, Cubone runs in and hugs Marowak. They share a moment, and after finally seeing that her child is safe, Marowak is able to pass on. Fuck, man. Now that's over, Red quickly cleans everything up. He challenges and defeats Team Rocket, driving them out of Pokemon Tower, and saves Mr. Fuji. In return, he gives Red the Pokeflute and some strange stones that none of us here have any idea what they are. None of us. They're just some weird stones with no purpose right now. And with the problem solved, Red rides off to his next destination after teasing Blue for being a little baby. This episode was great, I guess. Anything with Cubone and Marowak just gets me emotional, man. Get out of here. Go to the next one. Like last episode, we get another short recap of what Red's been up to in his journey, like defeating Erica and Koga, foiling Team Rocket's plans, and evolving Charmeleon into Charizard. He's been pretty busy, but now he's in Saffron City, where he gets caught up in more Team Rocket shenanigans along with Blue. They rescue a woman being chased by a few grunts, and she explains that she's the secretary to the president of Silphco. Team Rocket had taken over the Silphco building recently, where they've holed up all the employees and scientists, forcing them to work on the Master Ball. She was able to escape with the task of getting word to the police of what's going on. They head over to the station station only to see rocket grunts waiting outside the entrance. Red asks Blue to take her to the station in Celadon City and explain what's going on, but he doesn't want to. In a very kind and gentle way, Red grabs Blue by the collar of his shirt and asks him nicely to take her there or he isn't a real Pokemon trainer. I mean, he handled it so calmly. How could you say no? And while Blue is taking care of that, Red storms Silphco, freeing the Pokemon and the scientists, eventually coming face to face with Giovanni. He realizes that the plans are falling apart and decides to retreat, but Red stops him. They have a battle that can barely even be called one, ending with Red getting absolutely destroyed and Giovanni escaping. Another montage of Red doing things happens. He defeats Sabrina and Blaine, explores Pokemon Mansion, and learns about the Viridian City gym leader, who is supposedly the strongest trainer of them all. But by the time he gets there, Blue has already defeated them and received his 8th and final badge. Now fired up, Red enters the gym only to be greeted by Giovanni. Red refuses to believe this, saying that every other gym leader loved their Pokemon, so there's no way he could be the final one. Red really pisses Giovanni off for some reason, so instead of battling him with his usual Pokemon, he brings out 2 specific Pokemon he put aside just for Red. He sends out Rhyhorn and instantly one-shots Red's Victory Bell. He quickly sends out Kabutops, which puts up a good fight at first, but is brought down not too long after. Next is Snorlax, who gets taken out right away too. Then he sends out Jolteon, and Giovanni is like, is this kid fucking stupid? Then somehow one-shots Jolteon with a Thunderbolt. This Rhyhorn gotta be doping, bro. There's no way. Red then brings out Hitmonlee, who's able to actually put up a decent fight. This gets Giovanni really into it, and even he's not sure why. With a lot of effort, Hitmonlee is able to finally take down Rhyhorn, but only after being taken down himself. Now they're both down to 1 Pokemon each. As they ready their Pokeballs, Giovanni remembers why this excites him so much. Red's stance, his determination. It reminds Giovanni of how he used to throw his Pokeball in those high-stakes moments. Now, with nostalgic memories flooding through, he sends out Rhyhorn to fight against Red's Charizard in the final battle. This is definitely one of the best sequences in the whole series. From Charizard and Rhyhorn both mega punching each other, to Charizard landing a clutch seismic toss to end it, it's definitely the most engaging and entertaining battle so far. And with that, Red defeats Giovanni, receiving the Earth Badge, but he refuses it at first. He doesn't want a badge from the leader of Team Rocket, so Giovanni just disbands Team Rocket right there. Kinda hard actually, I respect it. And now, he's no longer the Team Rocket leader, so Red accepts it as a badge from the gym leader, and he continues on his adventure. As with all the others, we got a montage. Red makes it to the Indigo Plateau and battles the Elite Four. They're all pretty short scenes, but they look fantastic. He defeats them all and learns he has one more battle to face. One against the current champion. As most of you probably expect, it's Blue, who's waiting on the champion spot. He does a little monologue before claiming he's the greatest trainer in the world and sends out his first Pokemon. We don't see the full battle, but we get the highlights with the matchups. Until finally, Blastoise takes down Jolteon, and they're both down to their last Pokemon. With confidence, Red sends out Charizard, calling back to their very first battle where Red got washed. Now, I thought the battle against Giovanni was the greatest looking one so far, but this one takes the cake. The harsh lines on Charizard and Blastoise make the weight of this battle feel even more heavy with each attack. Then, with a well-timed Fire Spin followed by a direct Fire Blast, Blastoise falls. Red takes the victory against Blue, making him the new Pokemon League champion. Hope you enjoyed your 15 minutes of fame, Blue. Better luck next time, buddy. He takes the loss pretty hard, actually, and it's really interesting to see his thoughts in more detail after such a massive hit. But he takes it in stride until Oak shows up and instantly says how disappointed he is, then glazing Red to no end. They enter the Hall of Fame, where Red's team is recorded for all of history, and the end. But there's still one more part to this series left. The post-game. We get another montage of Red catching countless Pokemon in order to complete the Pokedex, including the 3 legendary birds. As he goes to tell Oak that he completed the Pokedex, he learns that Blue got injured by a really strong Pokemon. They find out that it isn't anywhere on Red's completed dex, meaning there's still Pokemon out there that they didn't know about. Real quick, back in Lavender Town, the news of this strong Pokemon reaches Mr. Fuji. After asking about what type it is, he seems to clue in on what exactly this Pokemon is. It all connects back to the Pokemon Mansion on Cinnabar Island. Oak brings Red to his lab in order to prepare for the upcoming battle with this strong Pokemon. He asks about the stones Red received from Mr. Fuji, but he has no idea what they are. As Red is contemplating, he remembers the journals he read at the Pokemon Mansion about a newly discovered Pokemon named Mew and a group of scientists that studied it. Mew gave birth to Mewtwo, and it destroyed the lab. With this remembered information, Red makes his way to Cerulean Cave, where he comes face to face with Mewtwo. He makes attempts at catching it, but Mewtwo is just too strong. It all comes down to Charizard. They fight as hard as possible, but eventually Charizard gets blown back directly into Red and they fall into the water. But the mysterious stones, which are Mega Stones, if you didn't know, react, and Charizard Mega Evolves. Once again, they try to fight against Mewtwo, but to much greater effect this time around. Then, when it's weak enough, Red throws an Ultra Ball and catches it. The end. Actually, this time. Well, kinda. There's one more little scene at the end where they realize Mewtwo came from Mew, and oh my god, there's 151 Pokemon? That's crazy, I never knew that. And that's actually the end. Origins is awesome. I said it before, but seeing the story with a fresh coat of paint is so fun. I especially like the moments with Giovanni remembering his childhood because of Red. It gave a bit more depth to his character that I enjoyed a lot. We don't ever get to see this side of him in the games, at least not to this extent, and it's really nice to see. And the overall production was super good too. The battles particularly were a treat to watch, especially the ones in episode 4. I know a lot of people complain about there being too much Kanto and that they're sick of it, which I understand. Pokemon definitely does pander to Kanto a lot more than other regions, but we all know why. It's because this is where it all started. It's very important. No matter how much time passes or how many times I experience it, I'll always love revisiting Kanto and seeing the characters again. It's such a wonderful time every time. Now, on to the grading. Story gets a 4 out of 5. I won't repeat myself too much, but the story is always a classic. Though it is pretty standard in terms of Pokemon stories, so that's why it doesn't get a full score. I did really enjoy the bits with Mewtwo and the added Mega Evolution plotline, but it wasn't enough to bring it to a 5. Doesn't mean it's bad in any way though, far from it. It's still a heartfelt experience with plenty of emotion. From the lessons about treating Pokemon with love and care to bring out their full potential, to Giovanni turning over a new leaf due to Red's influence, there's some really good stuff here, and I liked it a lot. Feeling gets a 5 out of 5. Even though Kanto isn't the region I'm the most nostalgic for, it still makes me feel things, like a lot of things. Every route I have memorized, every town I know the layout of, and every character I love. I'm just so connected to all of it, so anytime I get to experience it again, it makes me feel so good inside. So watching this took that feeling and amplified it to like 1,000. And finally, enjoyment gets a 4 out of 5, giving Origins a solid 13 out of 15. If I'm being honest, this one's a little hard for me to explain. Once I finished watching it and got to this grade, my gut was telling me to put a 4, and I'm not entirely sure why. I did like and enjoy Origins a lot, don't get me wrong, but there's something keeping me from giving it a 5, and unfortunately it's hard for me to find what that means. I know it probably doesn't make sense, but that's just how it is. My bad. Blame my brain. I just really hope we get more series like this one through the different regions one day. Maybe go in order and do Johto next? I don't know. I just feel like there's tons of potential here, especially for some of the more lore and story heavy regions like Unova or Alola. I guess we can only hope. Anyways, moving on to the next series, we have... We got our first anthology series, and man, what a spectacle. If you've ever wondered about side stories that don't get covered or only have a one-off mention, there's a good chance you'll find a lot of enjoyment in Generations. 18 episodes long, with each one being 3 to 5 minutes, the amount of content they're able to cram into such a short runtime is genuinely impressive. Not to say every single one is an absolute banger, but it's not like any of them are downright horrible either. That's enough setup though, let's get into the episodes. These will be pretty quick-fire reviews, so we aren't here for 10 hours. Brief summary, my thoughts, the rating, and then at the end, my overall thoughts of the whole series. Here we go. Very much an introduction episode. It starts with a cute intro of someone booting up Pokemon Red as it transitions into animation. We follow Pikachu and Red going to different landmarks throughout the regions, though only up to Kalos since Generations was produced and presumably finished before Sun and Moon dropped. I love this, personally. It's so cool seeing these iconic locations brought to life and given so much energy. I'll always stand by that the Pokemon side projects always give that little extra touch of life that the games can't always accomplish, and this is even more proof of that. The music switching to rearrangements of each generation's main battle theme is such a good idea, too. Episode 1 does exactly what it sets out to do extremely well, and it hits all those nostalgic beats. 10 out of 10. Episode 2 is where Generations really starts to show its range. It's a police raid on the Viridian City gym, plain and simple. Looker and the police are investigating Giovanni, trying to find his location. When they get a tip that he's at the gym, they storm the place, only to find nothing. Giovanni had already left after giving 2 trainers badges, presumably red and blue, and he vanished without a trace. Another banger. Obviously, it's still Pokemon, but seeing a topic like this covered with absolute sincerity is extremely cool. All the groups infiltrated from different locations, using their Pokemon to break through the walls. I just love when they use Pokemon for things that aren't battling like this. It adds a lot of depth to the world that can be kind of lacking sometimes. The only bad thing about this one is that I wish there was more, but I can't be too greedy. There's still like 16 more episodes, so we got plenty of peak to go through. Oh, this episode gets a 9 out of 10, by the way. If it was like even a minute longer, it would have gotten a 10, but it was still really great. Listen, if Generations is gonna keep putting out banger after banger, I don't know if I'll be able to live through how good it is. I got 911 on standby just in case. Like the last episode, the only negative is that there isn't more. We watched Blue absolutely steamroll through the Elite Four with basically no issue, and that's more or less the whole episode. I haven't mentioned it yet, but one of the obvious aspects of Generations is how absolutely incredible it looks. Because of the various directors and storyboard artists, the characters are fresh and are drawn in ways we've never seen before in official media. I'll get into a bit more detail on certain episode directors later, since some of you actually might know some of their past work, but I'll save that for specific episodes. But yeah, Generations is absolute eye candy. I do really love the vibe vibe that they give off for the Elite Four in this, especially at the beginning. They feel like an actual threat, and they mention how it's been a while since anyone has actually collected 8 badges, which makes the feat have a lot more weight to it compared to the games. I mean, there, you get them without much issue and become champion just like that. So portraying it as a surprise that someone actually got all 8 is super cool. This episode gets a 9 out of 10 as well for the same reasons as the last one. This series is so good, man. Episode 4 is definitely my favorite one so far, full stop. Getting into Gen 2 content now, it follows Lance and Dragonite raiding Team Rocket's base in Mahogany Town. They wipe the floor with them, obviously, but everything else surrounding this episode is what makes it so good. First of all, the episode looks incredible. I know that isn't saying much when the previous episodes have also looked incredible, but I'm more talking about the way this episode moves. Especially when Dragonite does literally anything. The way you can see the flamethrower building up in its throat before roasting Team Rocket's Pokemon. The way it absolutely destroys the tech inside the base itself, and so on. Everything is just so snappy and well timed. Shout out to the way these grunts walk as well. Love these guys. A lot of this polish is thanks to the episode director and storyboard artist Kazuyoshi Yaginuma, who you might know as a key animator on a little-known anime movie called Akira, as well as a long list of many other credits on many other big properties. This guy's an industry veteran. He actually directed and storyboarded episode 2 of Generations as well, so he's on a generational run already. Hey, little side thing. This is editing marker here, and I learned that apparently back in 2018, this guy got let go for anti-Semitic tweets. So yeah, he super sucks, actually. Everything else about this episode is great, though. It's an easy 10 out of 10 for me. Moving on. Honestly, a much-needed slower episode after the back-to-back balls to the wall last few. The cool thing about this one, though, is that it's a rough continuation of episode 2, with Looker back and still investigating Giovanni 3 years later. He runs into Silver, and we get some backstory on the last time we saw his father, being Giovanni. I've always loved Silver's character, so this just puts a big smile on my face. The point of this episode isn't to be super flashy or bombastic. It slows the pace and strives to tell a short story between father and son, through the eyes of Looker. It was nice. 9 out of 10. The ratings feel almost obsolete at this point with how many high numbers I'm giving out, but can you blame me? Experiencing these stories that we just never get to see in the games is genuinely so cool. But this next one we do know a good amount about from the games. The lore of Entei, Raikou, and Suicune. This one's more about Suicune though. Yucine goes to the burned tower and recounts the past, when the legendary beasts were born. You know the story by now. And if you don't, tower burned down, beasts died, Rainbow Bird revived them, beasts alive. There was something very serene about this one, especially when Suicune appeared at the end. Suicune's battle motif playing on a soft piano while he only briefly gets to see Suicune with his own eyes. I don't know, it kinda got me emotional for some reason. To be honest, I've never thought about Yucine that much. Not because I don't like him or anything, but he isn't a character that stands out to me. But after watching this episode, I like him a lot more than I thought, so thanks Generations. 10 out of 10. On to Gen 3 now, and this is the first episode that feels just a little weird. It basically follows Team Magma as they all pile into the submarine before going to wake up Groudon and stuff. They leave and Courtney stays behind to battle Brendan, but that's about it. The battle doesn't happen, which feels a little disappointing. The vision Courtney has though is the coolest part of the episode. We get to see Primal Groudon just going absolutely apeshit on everything with his Godzilla beam, which is great, and Team Magma dies too. That's practically it. The other episodes where I wanted more were because of how much was densely packed into the runtime, leaving me so invested that when they ended I felt like, oh man, it ends there? When episode 7 feels like, it ends there? What happened? It still looked great though, and the music in this one was noticeably hard as fuck, so 7 out of 10. Episode 8 was fucking awesome. This is the complete opposite of the last one in a few different ways. This time, the focus is on Team Aqua going to awaken Kyogre, and in this one, stuff actually happens. Archie awakens Primal Kyogre and instantly regrets it, even though everyone around him was like, hey buddy, this is probably a bad idea. He thought that if he held the blue orb, he could control Kyogre, and then 2 seconds later he just threw it, so I don't know where that idea came from. Could use some workshopping. The episode ends in a pretty crazy and hilarious way with Kyogre jump scaring the camera and their fates being undetermined. In terms of production, this episode is up there with episode 4. They somehow got Arifumi Imai, you know, the animator that's extremely famous for all those crazy scenes in Attack on Titan and even worked on One Punch Man and Vinland Saga, to direct, storyboard, and key animate in this episode. And once you know that, it becomes so obvious why this episode looks as good as it does. The movement of the characters and the environment, to the expressions and effects themselves, it's all incredible. Top tier stuff all around. 10 out of 10. At this point, you probably know what I'm gonna say, so let's just get into why this episode is so great. Deoxys is in it, so you know it's gonna go hard. In the first half, a reporter and her camera guy break into the Moss Deep Space Center to get some unreleased footage related to a meteor being destroyed. Then, the second half is a crazy fight between Mega Rayquaza and Deoxys in space. These two are some of my favorite Pokemon of all time, so being able to see them both go all out like this is so cool. And it reminds me a bit of the movie, just a little cooler. This whole scene is more or less an adaptation of the Deoxys fight from the Delta episode, which makes sense as these these episodes follow the games extremely closely. That's one of the many reasons I like Generations so much. It's rare we get animated Pokemon content that adapts direct scenes from the games. It's another banger, 10 out of 10. Where do I even begin with episode 10? Well, we're in Gen 4 now, so that's cool. And it starts with a horror short film. Cheryl and her Chansey come across the old chateau deep in Eterna Forest. They only need a place to stay for the night, just a single night, so there's no way anything bad could happen in that short amount of time. Huh? What the fuck? Oh my god. Oh my god. In a single night, these two get absolutely scarred for life by going through one traumatic experience after the other. This is not the kind of vibes I expected to feel going into Generations, but I honestly don't hate it. This just continues to show the range that this series has with its varying directors and visions. The part when it zeroed in on them eating the fake food got me feeling genuinely uncomfortable. Like, if I saw this as a kid, it would probably give me some kind of nightmares. Also, not a fan of the butler guy. He was enjoying it way too much. 10 out of 10 though. It's got Giratina in it. Instant 10 out of 10. Episode 11 adapts the climax on Spear Pillar when Cyrus summons Dialga and Palkia. But a little uninvited guest shows up and ruins the fun. Come on, Giratina, read the room. Cyrus gets sent to the distortion world, but he's actually cool with it and stays there for the rest of his life. The end. Great episode. I just wish we got to see a little teeny tiny bit more of the distortion world, but that's the only criticism I really got. With the little screen time that Giratina had, he'd prove that he's just got that aura, man. Especially when he comes out of the ground covered in goo and shit. Such a sick shot. 9 out of 10. Honestly, I wasn't sure if I'd like this episode at first. Can't say I'm the biggest Heatran fan, so I wasn't exactly jazzed to see him slowly walk down some stairs. And Buck is a character that I'm familiar with, but don't have much memory of, so I was just gonna watch through and hopefully see one or two cool scenes. Then Looker showed up out of nowhere and knocked Charon out with a clean hit. I was locked in after that. Buck puts the stone back on the pedestal and Heatran actually dies, so that's pretty cool. I like that a lot. The episode ends on a really weird note, actually, like there was supposed to be more, but it just gets cut off. Other than that, I enjoyed this one a lot more than I thought I would. I particularly like the way Looker is drawn in this episode too. It's very detective-like. 8 out of 10. Start of Gen 5 and the bangers just keep coming. If you played the games, you know this iconic scene. The castle comes up from the ground and the sages just yap, yap, yap. But every gym leader shows up to fight Team Plasma. It's so great. And fucking Bryson throwing hands is one of the greatest things I've ever seen. It's rare we get to see people fighting each other and not Pokemon, so it's very welcome. Yeah, but this episode rocked. The gym leaders from Gen 5 are so iconic, and this scene just reiterates that even more. Most of the time, the gym leaders from the games don't do all that much when it comes to the story, so this scene has always been really cool to me because of that. Like, if anyone's gonna band together to save the region, it's gonna be the strongest trainers to step up. 10 out of 10. Episode 14. Man, episode 14. Lots to talk about. First, the art direction. This looks incredible. I know, I sound like a broken record, but this one's a standout. I mean, just look at the way Drayden is drawn. What are they feeding this man? Holy shit. The way everyone is drawn, actually, is genuinely so sick. I love seeing characters we know drawn in such varying styles. Like I said, this is a benefit of having different directors and staff for different episodes. Each one feels so unique in art and tone. As for what actually happens in the episode, Colress shoots his Curum cannon from the plasma frigate and freezes Opelousas City to get the DNA splicers. I really love these episodes focused on certain scenes from the games that feature the villains doing villain things. It gives a lot more weight to their actions due to the scale of it seeming way bigger in these episodes. Like, people probably died in here with how much city got frozen. Anyways, great episode, 10 out of 10. It's honestly getting a bit redundant at this point, but episode 15 is another great one. I know, I'm sorry. A fair amount of this episode itself is a battle between N and Ghetsis, which is not a bad thing whatsoever. The way Reshiram moves around and dodges Kurum's attacks in this cave environment is so satisfying. But it doesn't last as long as I would have hoped, and Kurum fuses with Reshiram. Side note, this is really terrible, but it's so funny and a little jarring when Ghetsis straight up calls N a freak.
The freak.
I don't know, it's a little silly to me, and I think it's funny. N can feel that Reshiram is still in there, but unfortunately it's not enough to stop him from firing off another attack directly at him. But just in time, Hilbert shows up on Zekrom and saves the day. Good episode. There wasn't anything insane that takes up to a 10 out of 10 level for me, but that isn't to say it was bad. Gen 5 has some of my favorite characters, one of them being N and his whole story surrounding him. So seeing it brought to life like this is gonna be sick no matter what. And I love how batshit insane Ghetsis is to a somewhat comedic degree. 9 out of 10. Waiter! 5 pure minutes of Lysander glazing, please. Out of Gen 5 and into the final 3 episodes, all based in Kalos. And we start with an Apple conference. This entire episode focuses solely on Lysander, showing the dichotomy between what's being presented to the media and what he's planning behind the scenes. Classic billionaire CEO stuff. His conversation with Diantha is one of the funniest things I've watched in my life, to be honest. They're sitting at this cafe and she's just like, change is pretty cool actually. And Lysander responds with, I would destroy the entire world. if I woke up with a single gray hair? Reasonable response, but it's scary when you say it out loud. That's the long and short of it though. But the final segment has this sick Team Flare battle guitar cover that goes way too fucking hard. Like, it actually got me hyped even though there was like nothing happening. It was very cool. 8 out of 10. Looker's back, and what a rough day he's having, huh? A lot of these episodes can only be truly understood if you've played the games and have that context going into it. But even if you don't have that context, you could still get a rough understanding of what's going on just by watching. Episode 17 though feels like one that you like need some context for, or it'll make literally no sense. Basically, Looker is chasing after this mysterious person in a super cool suit. This person though turns out to be Emma, Looker's assistant. Damn, that sucks. Wonder how this happened. Oh, it's over. Okay. If you know nothing about the expansion suit and why Emma is wearing it in the first place, this episode probably feels so weird. Though if you're making it this far into Generations while not knowing these things, you probably expect that already. But with all that aside, the vibes of this episode are really cool. Emma running across the rooftops is super sick too. This one is shorter than most episodes, however, so it ends as soon as it starts. It's hard to find the words explaining how I feel about this one, but one word does come to mind. Okay. 6 out of 10. The final episode of Generations, and what an episode to end it on. Before I explain what happens, let me set the groundwork first. AZ's story has always been one of my favorites in the entirety of Pokemon. It's such a tragic and genuinely heartwarming story that anytime I think about it, I get emotional. Basically, this whole episode is an adaptation of the ending battle with AZ after you become the champion in X and Y. It goes through the entire story of AZ, from when his Floette was drafted into the war, to AZ building the ultimate weapon to revive it, and then using the weapon to end the war forever. After that, his Floette left, and he wandered the land for 3,000 years, searching for it. At the end of your battle with him, AZ finally finds peace after all this time. And because of that, his Floette finally reunites with him in a beautiful scene. Shit gets me every time. 10 out of 10. Now, this could be late news by the time this video comes out, but I'm an AZ ride or die, okay? I don't care if he committed war crimes 3,000 years ago, it's water under the bridge, honestly. Let him be happy and run his little hotel, okay? He's not hurting anyone, if his prices are fair, at least. And with that, that's Pokemon Generations all finished up. Overall, it's a great series. For me, one of my favorite parts about the Pokemon games are the characters, and their full focus here. Being able to hear them speak, especially, is very cool. In a game where you don't have voices to put to the faces, unless you play Masters, it's very refreshing to hear these characters for the first time. And the production on these episodes was just insane. Not every episode was created equal, but that's not to say any of them were bad. Definitely some of the best Pokemon animated media I've ever watched. Also, here's my top 5 episodes in order. Great stuff. But what we have next is even greater. Get ready for the craziest Glaze Sesh you've ever heard. Let's move on to Twilight Wings. Every once in a while, you watch something that feels different. It's a pretty broad term, but that something usually has what you might call soul. The feeling that this thing you watched, or better yet, experienced, will stick with you for a long time after your first watch. That's what Twilight Wings is to me. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. As I'm writing this, Twilight Wings might be my favorite piece of Pokemon media ever created. Each episode is only 6 to 7 minutes each, but I found myself getting emotional during every single one. The ability to impact someone in that amount of time is nothing short of impressive. So, since I respect this one a lot, the script will be a lot more genuine with less jokes and stuff for this section. I want to speak from the heart with this one, and honestly, if you haven't watched Twilight Wings, I'd recommend going to watch it for yourself before I talk about it. There's no way I'll do it justice while reviewing it. This kind of series is made to experience for yourself, not through some Cliff Notes version on a YouTube video. It's less than an hour long, and definitely more than worth your time. And let's be real, if you're watching a video this long about Pokemon, you got the time. Anyways, let's go into why Twilight Wings is so good. Starting with the first episode. We're introduced to our protagonist, John, a young kid sitting in a hospital room covered with Leon posters, watching the champion of Galar on the TV. He seems to be a big fan of the champion, if it wasn't obvious enough. His friend Tommy comes in to watch the match as well. It's quick, but Leon takes the victory against B in only a few moves. It would have been really cool to have seen this battle from other angles, but I think the point of watching it through the TV is to show the separation between John and the real thing. We only get to see it from the kids' perspectives, only from a small TV, which is really interesting. John lays back after getting too caught up in the excitement and says that he wants to see Leon battle live one day. However, it turns out Chairman Rose is coming to visit the hospital very soon, so John quickly decides to write a letter asking Rose if he can go to one of Leon's battles. He's a little late though, as Rose is already here giving kids autographs and preparing to head out. John chases after him up the stairs, all the way to the roof of the hospital, giving every ounce of energy he has just for the chance, the glimpse of maybe catching up to Rose and hand delivering his letter. But he's already gone. He was just a split second too late. Until the Corviknight taxi driver turns around and drops off Rose on the roof again. John almost collapses from exhaustion, but Corviknight quickly flies over and catches him. A Corviknight that was stated to be snappy around strangers, mind you. Rose notices this and asks him a very simple question. Do you like Pokemon? Because the Corviknight seems to like John very much, reminding Rose of a certain champion. He picks up the letter and takes it back to the taxi, saying that John will make a good trainer seeing how much Pokemon like him. Rose raises the letter, revealing a drawing of Leon and Charizard, and that's where episode 1 ends. It's not an exaggeration to say that I was hooked within the first 10 seconds of Twilight Wings. From the beautiful art direction to the ethereal atmosphere, it was truly a sight to behold. Being produced by Studio Colorido, it's got a powerhouse of a team behind it. And being directed by Shingo Yamashita, it's no surprise that it gets taken to an even further level. Even if you don't know him by name, if you watch anime, then there's a good chance you're familiar with Yamashita's work. Directing Jujutsu Kaisen OPs 1 and 2, Chainsaw Man OP 1, Ranking of Kings OP 2, some episode director and key animation roles on stuff like Chainsaw Man, Free Ren, Gurren Lagann, Soul Eater, and even some work on another Pokemon miniseries we have yet to get to. He has a very distinct style that shines through even here. The way the characters move is something I feel like I need to point out as well. So much detail and planning is put into even the smallest movements, making it feel so full of life. Even the Pokemon too, which we didn't see much this episode, but will definitely become more obvious as we get into later episodes. Enough about the production though. We didn't get much about John outright, but the environmental storytelling and dialogue gives us enough to get a good grasp of what's going on. He's a young kid who looks up to the champion of Galar, Leon. He wants to be a powerful trainer just like him, but suffers from some kind of illness keeping him trapped in this hospital. Whatever illness it is, it makes it hard for him to get around quickly and do strenuous tasks. Even so, Chairman Rose, who is actually really kind in this episode, sees potential in John to become a great trainer just like Leon. It's an inspiring start to what's going to be a very emotional ride, so strap in. When Rose asks the question, do you like Pokemon? It makes me weirdly emotional for some reason. It's such a simple question, but it feels like there's so much weight to it, especially when asked to John. Anyways, that's everything in episode 1, and there's still 6 more episodes to go. So let's move into episode 2. This one's all about Bee. After losing to Leon in episode 1, Bee goes out for an intense training regimen in the wild area. The same Corviknight taxi driver from last time drops her off in the middle of the desert. Her choice. But she forgets her phone. With no hesitation, she sends out her goons and gets to work, exploring the beauty of the wild area with them and training rigorously. Her mind is set on defeating Leon no matter what. And because of this, she pushes and pushes herself without realizing how overworked she is. Matrop tries to give her a little snack, telling her to take a break and eat something, but she's too focused to notice. Later, after training with Machamp during a rainstorm, they take shelter in a cave nearby where Bee still isn't quitting, even though she's obviously in pain. Before Machamp can answer, a sudden rock slide traps them all inside. Out of options, Bee checks her bag to call for help, but her phone isn't there. It was left on the taxi, though she still doesn't stop, walking off to try and find another exit while her Pokemon watch and worry. She doesn't make it very far before tripping and falling to the ground in the dark cave. She lies there for a bit before opening her eyes and seeing the cave around her lit up by beautiful, colorful crystals, bringing her back to her senses, wondering how she looked to her Pokemon, making them worry. She goes back and apologizes to them. She realizes that the path she's going won't lead to victory against Leon or even any trainer. Then Machop walks up and gives her a chocolate bar. What a cutie. Through the light reflecting off the wrapper, Bee notices a light coming from the cave. They all run over to break free. They exit into this beautiful and serene area with a waterfall when the Corviknight taxi driver flies down and says he's been looking for Bee. He quickly hands her the phone she left in the cab and asks what she's doing all the way out here. She says that they were just staying out of the rain. A bit of an understatement, but who am I to judge? And that's episode 2. Let's get this out of the way first. It's another gorgeous episode. The highlight for me was seeing the beauty of the wild area in full focus and in ways we've never seen it before. This is what I imagined the true vision for the wild area was. Unfortunately, the games couldn't reach this level of detail and serenity, but that doesn't take away from how we see it in the episode whatsoever. But this episode isn't about how beautiful the wild area is. It's about Bee's internal struggles after losing to Leon. Unfortunately, I played Shield my first time through Galar, so I haven't had many chances to interact with Bee, but she's definitely one of my favorite gym leaders from the games. Even though her methods were practically killing herself at some point, her determination and focus to improve is definitely inspiring. And the fact that she can go toe-to-toe with a Machamp, like, that's crazy. But her loss to Leon weighed on her heavily, clouding her judgment and keeping her from realizing that she had help around her the entire time. She comes to realize this when they break out of the cave, and it's a really touching scene. But her realizing this only makes her stronger in the end. The story is pretty disconnected to the one we just started with John, but it isn't totally without merit. We did see her lose in the previous episode, so it's not like this comes out of nowhere. And it's really cool to see this from the perspective of a struggling gym leader. It shows that even those trainers at a high level still have their own struggles to fight through. Very fun. Now, let's move into the 3rd episode. This is a safe space, so I'm gonna be 100% truthful with you all. This episode made me cry like a baby. For episode 3, it seems like we went back in time a little bit to the moment Bee was fighting Leon in episode 1. Except, this time we see Hop's perspective. He's watching intently with Wooloo at his side, studying his big brother's moves. Hop praises Charizard for all those amazing things it can do, making Wooloo a little bit jealous. It tries to replicate Charizard and maneuver through the air, but it fails. Caught up in the excitement of training, Hop doesn't realize Wooloo's frustration. He talks about going to the Pokemon League with Wooloo at his side, but before he knows it, it runs off. Wooloo walks around what we can assume to be Wedgehurst, continuing to mimic Charizard. This gets it into a few scuffles and situations that it is not a fan of. Eventually, it tries to fly, but to no avail, crashing down into a herd of other Wooloo tended to by Milo. He finds that Wooloo is lost and wants to help out, so he calls in the good old Corviknight taxi driver, but Wooloo doesn't want to go back. They don't really care though, and fly off towards the address on Wooloo's collar. At the same time, Hop is frantically running through the city, asking anyone he can about Wooloo. Kids, civilians, bartenders, anyone who can give them the slightest idea as to where it is. But after all that, no luck. Out of options, he yells out Wooloo's name on a hilltop, hoping that maybe, just maybe, it hears his cries. And to his credit, it does. Wooloo is flying right over him in the Corviknight taxi and hears Hop. Before it can respond, however, the bracelet on its leg snaps off, flying through the wind and past Hop. He looks up and sees Wooloo, running and calling out to it, apologizing and pleading for Wooloo to come back so they can go to the Pokemon League together, because it has to be with Wooloo and no one else. Then, with tears in its eyes, Wooloo leaps out of the taxi and directly into Hop's arms. They embrace, and Hop tells Wooloo that it's perfect just the way it is. And just like that, it ends after Hop and Wooloo sleep on their way back home. This episode is split into two perspectives: Hop and Wooloo. Hop, who wants to get stronger and beat his brother no matter what, and Wooloo, who wants to be strong enough to help Hop achieve his dreams. Hop is extremely excited about training and getting stronger, so his words hold no malice towards anything, but when he praises Charizard and says how incredible its technique is in front of Wooloo, it can be taken a different way. To Wooloo, it probably thinks that it isn't strong enough to even hold a candle to Pokemon like Charizard, so it runs off. Its goal was to try and find ways to improve itself, and it wasn't planning on going back home until it found those answers, seeing as it was very against going back to Hop right away. But we all know Hop didn't mean it like that at all. He loves and appreciates Wooloo exactly the way it is right now, even if it isn't some crazy strong Charizard or whatever, and that's what he tells Wooloo at the very end of the episode. It's really simple when you boil it down, but it's so damn effective in making me cry, especially when the music kicks in as soon as Hop starts to run after the Corviknight taxi. Don't get me started, bro. The relationship between a person and their pet/animal, or in this case, partner Pokemon, is one of the most beautiful things to exist. There are few connections stronger than that, so when there's a hopeful reunion or a sad story to do with those relationships, they just get me, man. Another fantastic episode. Let's move on to episode 4. Following episode 2, focusing on a gym leader, this one gives us a similar concept, but this time focused on the water-type gym leader Nessa. She's struggling with a recent loss to Milo when Chairman Rose enters and not so subtly comments on Nessa's modeling career possibly affecting her performance as a gym leader. Understandably, this pisses her off and she vents to Sonia, but she says at the end of the day, the choice is up to Nessa. This weighs on her mind even while at a photo shoot and commercial filming, where she recalls being at the same lake when she was little. An injured Feebas, probably bullied by other Pokemon, swam up to her on a boat. Nessa tells it that it should evolve and get back at the Pokemon who bullied it. Then she asks something of the Feebas, but we cut back to the present day where we see a brief glimpse of Milotic swimming underwater. Nessa then goes through more of her photo shoot, eventually taking a break, when she sees something glistening in the water and instantly dives in, coming face to face with the Milotic from before. Pretty abruptly, we jump forward in time with the commercial already complete and Sonia talking to Nessa about it on the phone. Sonia says that Milotic is a beautiful Pokemon, but it's also super strong, so Nessa should just be more like a Milotic. Then we get an incredible sequence of Nessa riding on top of Milotic through the water. As they swim together, she remembers what she asked of Feebas all that time ago: to let her ride on it as a Milotic. We cut forward again to Nessa visiting Oleana in her office. She slams her hands down on the desk and proclaims that she'll be the best gym leader and the best model, before quickly leaving, though not forgetting to say that she'll win today's match. She then hops on the Corviknight taxi and travels to the stadium. Nessa's struggles with feeling forced to pick something to do is a struggle I'm sure most of us can relate to. There's times where we feel like we have to make an ultimatum and leave something behind in order to focus on something else. But with a lot of work and perseverance, what's stopping you from doing both and being the best at both? It's honestly super inspiring. Obviously, there's some situations where choosing to do both things will make you unhappy due to the possible stress, but in this case, I'm sure it'll only help Nessa feel more fulfilled. Now, whether or not that's the result Chairman Rose expected after making a comment on her career choices, we'll never know, but he seems calculated enough to see what he said as encouragement and not just a slight on her character, even if he is kinda evil. Anyways, like I mentioned in the summary section, this episode was beautiful, especially the Milotic scene. Animated by industry icon Bahi JD, no wonder it looks incredible. If you watch a good amount of anime, you're more than likely familiar with his work, even if you don't know him by name. He's done a lot of incredible recent work on One Piece particularly, just amazing stuff all around, so seeing him on here is such a treat. And the little connection Nessa and the Feebas, now Milotic, shared was very cute. An interesting thing about that actually, in the Japanese version of that flashback sequence, Nessa gets cut off before saying she wants to ride Milotic in the future, but the line is finished when Milotic looks back at her, paying it off and realizing this is the same Pokemon while she's already riding it. But in the English version of the flashback, she says the whole line before we see Milotic, so as soon as she rides it, you just kinda know it's the same one instead of being like, well, it could be, while watching the Japanese version. It's a very minor change, but I feel like finishing the line for the first time while she's on Milotic's back just feels better in terms of the writing. I don't know, just something I thought was weird. Enough yapping, let's move on to episode 5. As opposed to the previous episodes, episode 5 doesn't focus on a gym leader or a character we already know pretty well. It's the opposite actually. This one focuses on Chairman Rose's assistant, Oleana. We start by seeing how she and Chairman Rose initially met. Oleana was a scientist studying the Dynamax phenomenon, but as time passed and her colleagues couldn't keep up, she eventually ended up alone, and that's where Rose found and hired her. Fast forward in time, and we learn that Rose is out for the day, and it's up to Oleana to make sure the ship sails smoothly. Then, a montage of Oleana's day plays out, going to meetings, attending conferences, talking with gym staff, etc. She's got a lot on her plate and barely enough time to do it all. She doesn't even get more than a minute to sit down and rest before heading out to meet with the next executive, where she gets another call to attend even more work. The only slight break she gets is the time spent walking through the bustling streets. However, a Corviknight taxi lands nearby and out comes Chairman Rose. He says he's on his way to the office and asks if she wants to come along. Cut to the both of them flying in the taxi, talking about the busy day Oleana's had. She hands Rose the letter from John in the first episode, and he says that he's glad to have her by his side. There's some really crazy tension in the cabin until the pilot points out a Dynamax battle is happening at the stadium. Oleana quickly corrects him that it's actually Gigantamax, and she goes on about all the reasons why it's different while Rose listens with a smile. I have less to say about this episode compared to the others due to the fact that this one's pretty straightforward. Other than the nice character moments with Rose finding Oleana and appreciating her work even to this day, it's mostly about an average day for Oleana. It's cool to learn more about her and see the inner workings of the things she does to help Rose, but that's really all there is to it. The episode was very pretty, as always though. There weren't any standout scenes, but it was consistent in the art direction and everything else surrounding it, so I don't have any complaints. Good stuff. On to the next. This episode is probably one of the most interesting to me since it's more or less a continuation of the first episode with John and Tommy. It starts in a cemetery with Alistair hanging around. Tommy shows up and tries to ask Alistair if he could get an invitation to one of Leon's matches, but not for himself. It's for John. Tommy explains that they recently got into a fight. John was saying that he hopes to go on a journey as a Pokemon trainer one day, but Tommy shuts it down saying that it's impossible. John retorts by asking what Tommy wants to do. He says that they don't even know when they'll get discharged from the hospital, so there's no point in even thinking about it. Getting more upset, John says that Rose said he'd make a great trainer, but he hasn't even gotten a reply to his letter yet. So Tommy says it's still impossible. He almost throws a shoe at him, but stops himself. Before he got the chance to apologize for what he said, Tommy was discharged from the hospital. Alistair says that if he wants to make up, then he should just talk to him. So they sneak over to the Corviknight taxi and ask the pilot to take them to the hospital. With the help of Alistair distracting the security guard, Tommy is able to sneak in and make his way to John's room. He apologizes, taking back what he said. He explains that John loses sight of things when he gets really fixated on something, but this means that he never backs down, no matter what. So he would make a great Pokemon trainer. They're both gonna be great Pokemon trainers. Then he leaves, sitting up on the roof with Alistair. Tommy thanks him and they head back to the Corviknight taxi. But there's a little extra bit at the end of the episode. We see Leon going up the elevator of Rose Tower while chatting with Sonia on the phone. When he makes it to the top, Rose hands him John's letter, finally reaching its intended recipient. I really love this episode. As much as I enjoyed seeing other perspectives of characters we already know, I was also invested in the stories of these new characters we met back in the first episode. So when I realized this one was going to be focused on them, I knew it would be good. And it was. It's a pretty simple story of someone wanting to apologize to another person that they hurt, but not really knowing how or trying to do it in a roundabout way, when the best way to do it is to just talk, even if it might be scary. Not sure if that's why it had to be Alistair who helped, being the ghost gym leader and all, but it's still a neat connection. The friendship that John and Tommy have is super nice, and seeing them both come to the conclusion that they'll be great trainers together just warms my heart. I've been mentioning him throughout this entire section, but I really like how the Corviknight taxi driver is the connection between all of these characters. He's in every single episode to help take a character somewhere, connecting them all to the same place. So even if they don't interact together, they've still been weaved together by the story. It's very cool. Goes without saying basically, but the episode looked great, again. Like last episode, no big standout scenes, but it wasn't really necessary in this one. It was very low-key and quiet, which helped push the tone and message. Next up is technically the final episode of the Twilight Wings story, but there is another extra episode that they released for the Sword and Shield DLC after that, so we'll cover that one briefly too. On to the next. This episode really cemented Twilight Wings as one of the best Pokemon media to ever exist. It starts with an interview style sequence of all the gym leaders being asked one question: what do you think of Leon, the champion? They give a wide variety of answers, but most being a simple, he's strong. John and Tommy, well, mostly Tommy, are watching the interview segment live, but John doesn't find much interest in it. But when he sees Leon, he locks in. This is where his obsession with Leon began. Posters, poses, studying. Leon became a pillar in his life. And finally, he got a reply to his letter from episode 1, an invite to spectate Leon's match. He'll finally be able to meet his idol, if only he woke up on time. Accidentally sleeping in, John realizes that he's been left behind and quickly gets ready to board the Corviknight taxi. They fly off, trying to make it in time for Leon's match, but John spots someone on the nearby rock. It's Leon. They land and Leon says he got lost, but he spots Corviknight and asks for a ride. He didn't want to tire out Charizard before their big match. The driver offers Leon to ride on top of Corviknight to arrive quicker, so he accepts and brings John along. The two of them talk while flying through the clouds. It's simple conversations, but it's clear that Leon and John are very similar. Then, Leon gives Corviknight the okay to fly without worrying about them, so he blasts ahead even faster. John laughs and Leon asks if he's scared. John says he isn't at all, and Leon responds that he isn't either. Not too long after, they make it to the stadium just in time for the big match. They land on the field, and Leon says that seeing the match won't be enough to fulfill John's dream. He wants to become a Pokemon trainer too. Leon tells John that the next time they meet, they should battle, basically saying that he believes John will become a strong trainer no matter what. But there's no more time for that, because the battle with Raihan is about to start. Leon strikes his pose, the crowd cheers, and John is brought to tears. Finally seeing his idol in person, doing what he does best. He wipes his face clean and watches on with determination while one of the most incredible sequences I've seen in anything ever takes place. Words honestly can't describe how crazy, impressive, and insane this is. I don't think we've ever seen a Pokemon battle at this scale, and I don't know if we'll ever see it again, honestly. I'm basically still writing this part so I can fit more footage of the battle into this segment just so you can understand what I'm trying to explain. Then, before the climax of the battle, Leon looks back at John as if to say, "This is your dream. Come and get it." At least that's how I interpret it, because next John says that someday he'll become a Pokemon trainer too. And that's the end. Cinema. Absolute cinema. Where do I even begin with this episode? Well, it's what the whole story had been building up to. John meeting Leon, and there is a lot of that. I like how it's made clear that John and Leon share some similar traits. Them both sleeping in and not being scared when Corviknight went max speed are just a few. To me, this shows that John has what it takes to be an incredible trainer one day, possibly even as strong as Leon. But when they arrive at the stadium, the real show begins. Over a minute of just pure animation masterclass. The first segment is done by Horimitsu Seki, who did a lot of work on Ranking of Kings and some on Mob Psycho as well. His work has a certain smoothness and three-dimensional quality to it that makes it feel almost ethereal in a way. The battle feels like an actual battle, taking advantage of the stadium and the hazards around to give a sense of scale. Also, this little bit where the Dreamy Missiles run into each other and get angry so they run into each other again and die is really funny. Then, once Leon Gigantamaxes Charizard, it somehow gets even crazier. Animated by industry veterans Keiichiro Watanabe, Weiland Zhang, and Artist Unknown, this might be one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Like I mentioned earlier, if you've watched more recent episodes of One Piece, you're more than likely familiar with Zhang's work. More so if you watched Heavenly Delusion. And as for Watanabe, he had a good amount of recent work on Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 that you've probably seen. Basically, if you don't get the picture by now, these are some animation powerhouses behind this one scene, and it shows. The sheer power shown in these 40 seconds is beyond words. Gigantamax Charizard is genuinely intimidating with his Godzilla-style blasts, and the way he charges forward near the end. I particularly like the way turf and field are just being absolutely destroyed and tossed through the air, showcasing the size and strength of these guys. If you haven't looked into animation all that much, I'm sure the scene is still impressive to you, even without knowing who worked on it or certain techniques they used. That just shows how impressive it is. Oh yeah, the story. I forgot. John is going to be a Pokemon trainer. The end. Jokes aside, though, when John teared up after seeing Leon pose in person for the first time, I truly felt something. Especially with the music playing alongside, it gives me chills every time. Obviously, I can't play it here, but if there's any episode you're going to go out of your way to watch this one. It's something you have to experience, not listen to some guy yap about. But, like I said, even though this is the last episode of the main story of Twilight Wings, There's still one more left, so let's finish off strong. This episode isn't too story heavy, so I'm gonna be a lot more brief with the summary. Basically, Leon goes around Galar giving invitations to all the strongest trainers of the region. This invitation is to the Galarian Star Tournament, an event that Leon put together to show Galar even more exciting battles now that he's taken over the league. It's more or less a here's all these characters one more time kind of episode, so it's pretty neat, but not much to talk about in terms of actual deep discussion, which isn't a bad thing since the previous episode was more or less the actual conclusion to the series. This was just a victory lap, and honestly, I think it deserved it. Twilight Wings is lightning in a bottle. From the direction, to the story, to the soundtrack, at least as I'm writing this, it's hard to say if another piece of Pokemon media will make me feel the way that this series did. Every episode put the biggest dumb smile on my face, which is crazy because I don't even have a huge emotional attachment to Sword and Shield, and by extension the Galar region itself, but that just goes to show how incredible this series is. It made me care about every single character with ease and left me wanting so much more. I think that's the only negative I can say about it. There wasn't enough. Anyways, let's get into the score. The story gets a 5 out of 5. I'm so glad they chose to focus on an original character for the story instead of one we already know. Existing characters were connected to the overall plot and themes, yeah, but they weren't the protagonist. John was. Seeing John, this kid full of determination and dreams, finally meet his idol, Leon, and have his dreams validated by Leon too. I can't think of anything better. And all of the side stories in between with the gym leaders and other characters were wonderful too. This series did what Sword and Shield wasn't really able to do, at least for me, and that's make these characters, specifically the gym leaders, feel three-dimensional. We saw their struggles, what they do on a daily basis, and everything in between. It was really engaging. Feeling gets a 5 out of 5. The more I think about it, the feeling rating just comes down to how much I cried while watching something, and this one got me a lot. I can't say I sobbed or anything like that, but it did get me tearing up almost every episode, and that's due to the combination of the beautifully crafted stories paired with the breathtaking animation, especially the final battle with Leon and Raihan. Even though it's intense and super hype, it got me emotional, and I don't even really know why. The music definitely helped. It gets me every time. And finally, enjoyment gets a 5 out of 5, giving Twilight Wings a perfect score. I don't even feel like I need to explain this one. I think you can probably tell how much I enjoyed Twilight Wings based on the sheer length of this section alone. When I enjoy something, I talk a lot, and I talked a lot. That's really all there is to say. But with that, we've covered 3 of the 9 series that I'm planning on talking about throughout these episodes. This is only part 1, and there will be 2 more, but who knows when they'll come out. Really hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you to all my channel members and to everyone who supports me. Hopefully the next video will not take 3 months. Who knows, honestly. Who fucking knows?